Now, campaign groups are warning that people in older homes off-grid could be facing exorbitant costs in upgrading their heating systems. The government's expected to introduce a ban on installing new oil boilers in just 3 years.
Yes, the government's saying the move is needed to reduce emissions and hit net zero targets. Hannah, there's quite a lot of information in that one. What are these houses? What's their situation as it stands?
So we're talking about people who live off-grid, who don't have access to gas at the moment in their properties, and we'll run through it now. Net zero, remember, is the idea that we cut our carbon emissions to as close to zero as possible and then find ways to reabsorb the carbon that we do use so our total emissions come to zero. There are lots of things we would have to do to achieve that, but one proposal by the government is to introduce a ban on new oil boilers within 3 years. It would affect those homes, as we say, that aren't connected to the national gas grid. The idea is that those old boilers, which cause higher carbon emissions, would be replaced by greener alternatives, such as ground or air source heat pumps. The ban would affect an estimated 1.7 million households, the majority of which are in rural areas. It potentially comes into effect at least 10 years before similar bans on old gas boilers. There is already a government boiler upgrade scheme in place where some people can receive a grant of up to £6,000 to support the installation of a new heat pump. Today, the government's announcing that they're looking at making that scheme more flexible. But energy poverty and rural groups say that the actual cost of installing ground source heat pumps, for example, can go as high as this, up to almost £50,000. We spoke to Sam, who lives in an old property in rural Sussex. He says he's been quoted an awful lot of money when he's looked at installing a heat pump.
So we've been living here for 9 years, our quirky little lodge house. We love it. But here's our current heating system, which is an oil-fired boiler with a hot water cylinder behind. And come 2026, when they are going to potentially ban new oil boilers, if this breaks down, I'm looking at the horrendous cost of upgrading this to a heat pump, which is, in theory, the only viable option. I'm completely away from the gas network. Running on gas isn't really a viable option anymore. The government's trying to stop you from doing that, so that's off the cards. So it really only leaves heat pumps. And that's going to cost upwards of £25,000. Serious upheaval of the house, complete rejig of all the plumbing, all the radiators would need to be upgraded. And ideally, you'd be having to upgrade all the windows and beef up your insulation so that you didn't need a huge heat pump. And I just can't afford it. And I'm not alone in this. There are probably thousands of old listed properties, or even if they're not listed, they're old, running on oil. The government, in my opinion, should completely rethink that policy. And what worries me is if the government don't do this, I think it's going to hurt a lot of people.
Well, the government point out that the ban on new oil boilers is still a consultation, adding that they're fully focused on meeting a target of 600,000 heat pump installations per year by 2028. But once again, Naga and Charlie, this is an example that these net zero commitments, they are divisive. We've seen, people might be broadly in favour of protecting the environment, those kind of things. When it comes to people actually having to spend more money from their own pockets at a time when people are stretched, that then can be a lot less popular and a lot more politically difficult.
We'll keep an eye on this, Hannah. Thanks very much.